Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today is our art unit. It's also our all-English lecture. So we're going to be speaking all in English today. And we don't have the Chinese teacher with us today. We've given the teacher the day off.
Nice.
And so today we're going to be talking about glass. Okay, glass. It's all around us. It's in your windows. It's in your car. And you probably got some bottles in your medicine cabinet that are made out of glass. Of course, we got lots of plastic bottles these days. But glass still plays an important role in society. So when you make glass, however, you need a special skill called glass blowing. And that's our subject for today. The amazing art of glass blowing, smooth as glass.
Yeah, I've never done this personally, although I've seen it done. When I was a kid, I remember going to California on one of our vacations, and we went to a place where they did a lot of glass blowing. It was so beautiful. Of course, if you're a child, they're probably not going to let you try it because you can really hurt yourself. The torch that is used to turn that glass, in sort of a bendable, shapeable type of material is very hot. So, yeah, it's kind of dangerous for little kids, but it is so beautiful. I love the effects that they can achieve, especially when they try to use different colors. I love that. We'll be talking about this amazing art of glass blowing. And like Tom said, it's our all-English lecture. We'll talk a little slower and try to explain some of the words sometimes that pop out of our mouths that we won't have our Chinese teacher available for to tell you what we mean. So let's get started. We're going to read through the lecture first, and then we'll be back.
An artisan pulls a long pipe with a molten glass bubble on the end out of a furnace. Working skillfully with tweezers, the craftsman wrenches the glass into different shapes, creating the body of a carp within seconds. This is part of the ancient craft of glass blowing. Glass blowing emerged around 100 BC in Roman-controlled Syria, and the Roman government nurtured its development. Though the empire's collapse led to an interval of little innovation, glass blowing was revived during the Italian Renaissance and spread around the world. Mechanical glassmaking arose in the 19th and early 20th centuries, facilitating mass production. To this day, though, hand-blown glass fetches a loftier price owing to the expertise required to make it. To create a blown glass object, a glass blower first melts down glass inside a furnace. The glass is extracted on one end of a blowpipe and shaped on a metal slab. Throughout the process, the glass is periodically returned to the furnace to prevent it from solidifying. For added color, the molten glass is covered with tiny fragments of colored glass, which fuse quickly at high temperatures. The glass blower blows air into the glass through the blowpipe, uses tweezers for detail work, and detaches the glass from the pipe with shears. Finally, the glass goes to an oven to gradually cool. During the 1960s, Taiwan boasted a robust glass industry. Nearly all the world's Christmas lights were made here, for instance. But over time, most glassmakers were lured to China by low production overheads, leaving Taiwan's glass factories abandoned. To keep their trade alive, Taiwan's remaining glassblowers now sell exquisite glass sculptures and offer factory tours. These competent craftspeople are fighting to conserve Taiwanese glassblowing, but only with public support can this trade pass to the next generation.
Smooth as glass. The amazing art of glass blowing. We'll often talk about water, like water in a lake, that's smooth as glass. The wind's not blowing, and so the water's very still. It's not moving at all. Smooth as glass. Nice. So we're going to talk about the art of glass blowing. Like I said when we first started, I've never actually done this myself, but I've watched professionals do it. It's really amazing. And we're calling at least the person doing it in the first paragraph an artisan. If you're an artisan, it means you're somebody who is an artist that produces things by hand. Sometimes you'll have tools, of course, to use, but primarily you're talking about someone who's producing an object that takes a lot of time, a lot of skill. It's not mass-produced, It's not made in a big factory. It's someone who takes the time and has the skills they have developed over years of work to produce something that's truly beautiful.
Yes, in various places in Taiwan, we've got artisans who are skilled in various crafts. Like, I think in Chiayi, there are artisans there who make ceramic sculptures for temples and stuff like that. Or there are artisans in Inga who specialize in ceramics, etc., etc. People who carve things in Miaoli. We've got these artisans all over the place. This is a glass blower, though. So this particular artisan, this glass blower, this is what he or she does. The artisan pulls a long pipe with a molten glass bubble on the end out of a furnace. And yes, I remember seeing pictures of this when people blow glass. They use that very long pipe. It could be about 6, 7, 8 feet long or something like that. And there's a molten glass bubble on the end of that pipe. And they're pulling it out of a furnace. Now, molten means it's melted, especially if it's normally hard, like molten rock, for example.
Yeah.
That's what lava is that comes out of a volcano. It's molten rock. It's rock that's so hot, it's actually a liquid.
Right, and it is actually coming out of something called a furnace. We'll often use this word to talk about our homes, Some homes have old-fashioned furnaces. A furnace is a structure where usually has heat that's produced through gas, oil, wood. A wood furnace is kind of cool, old-fashioned. That's how they used to heat the homes long ago. But yeah, they use a furnace and they put something in there to fire up whatever they're using. Here we're using a pipe. And they put that pipe into the furnace. So it's kind of cool. Molten glass bubble. It's so cool to watch. It just it makes me wish I could go and watch this right now instead of just talking about it. So they work skillfully with tweezers. Tweezers is a pair of usually metal things that you can pull together. Tweezers are what we use, ladies, when we pull hair out of our eyebrows. Or maybe you have something that got into your finger, maybe like a piece of wood, and you use a pair of tweezers to pull it out. So it's a tool that you can use to squeeze together to use to pull something. So they're using tweezers to actually produce these beautiful glass shapes. And just like artisans, we explained what they are. A craftsman is a similar term. Somebody who is making some sort of craft, but who is very skilled. They're not beginners by any stretch of the imagination. So they're craftsmen. To wrench, he's wrenching the glass into different shapes. Typically, we see this word wrench as a noun. It's also a big tool that's used by, for example, plumbers or people who are building a home would have a wrench. When's the last time I used a wrench? I don't even think I own a wrench. You probably own a wrench, don't you?
Yeah, you use it with nuts and bolts, to loosen the bolts or to tighten them. And in this particular case, though, wrench is being used as a verb, which means to kind of move suddenly, kind of to one side to try to jerk something free. Like maybe, for example, your kid is holding on to something they're not supposed to be holding on to, so you wrench it out of their hand. You grab it, you twist it, you pull it, even though they are resisting. You wrench it out of their hand. So here the craftsman is wrenching the glass into different shapes, kind of pulling it this way and pushing it, because the glass, of course, is going to be resisting. And in this particular case, the artisan or the craftsman is creating the body of a carp, which, of course, is a kind of fish. It's common in Chinese art, and this is happening within seconds, and this is part of the ancient craft of glass blowing, which is a craft that's still alive and well here in Taiwan. I think I last saw it many years ago when I took my daughter to the Traditional Arts Village in Ilan, and I think there was somebody there working with glass. I don't know if it was glass blowing, but some kind of glass sculpture. I think they were using those glass tubes, you know, and a Bunsen burner. It's kind of similar. It's working with glass, but you get the idea. This is an ancient art, an ancient craft that's been around for a long time, and it's called glass blowing.
I had no idea how ancient this craft actually was until I saw our article here. It goes back to 100 BC in the country of Syria. Back then, the Romans controlled Syria. So it emerged. So this glass blowing actually made its way into civilization long, long ago. Yeah, that's a long time ago, 100 BC before Christ, in Roman-controlled Syria, and the Roman government nurtured its development. If you nurture something, you care for it, you encourage the growth of something or the development of something. We'll often talk about someone as being a wonderful nurturer. That's someone who nurtures. Typically, you nurture children, right? You help them grow and to learn good things and to grow in a healthy way. Here, of course, they're actually nurturing this glass blowing in their country, which is cool. We still have governments who will nurture different aspects of crafts, arts and crafts, where they give money to that particular craft or they support different artists so that they can continue producing beautiful things. That's wonderful.
It is, and again, back to the word nurture here. I remember many years ago when I first came to Taiwan, and I was reading the literature about Taiwan. It said, Taiwan is the only place in the world where traditional Chinese culture is nurtured and preserved. I think things have changed since that time, but yes, I guess back in the day when the Cultural Revolution was going on in China and stuff like that, indeed, lots of traditional Chinese things were being protected and nurtured here in Taiwan. So in this particular case, Rome thought, hey, glass blowing, that's pretty cool. We encourage you guys to do that. It might help the government of Rome someday in the future. Who knows? So they nurtured, they encouraged its development. Though the empire's collapse led to an interval of little innovation, glassblowing was revived during the Italian Renaissance and spread around the world. So eventually, the Roman Empire collapsed, and then there was this interval of little innovation. An interval is just a period of time between one period of time and another. Okay, so for example, sometimes when you go to university, there's an interval of time between when one semester ends and when the next one begins. You usually get some kind of break, a winter break or a summer break or something like that. There's an interval or a space between those two semesters.
Okay, so glassblowing was revived during the Italian Renaissance and spread around the world. If something is revived, guys, it means it's gone away for a while, but then it becomes more popular as people have more interest in it. Restore. My mom used to restore old pieces of furniture. You know, they were in pretty bad shape when she'd buy them at these flea markets where you can get really cheap stuff. And then she'd take home these pieces of furniture and she would strip the wood and then sand it and put a finish on it, a varnish. I mean, I can see my mom doing all this stuff. I've never done anything like that. I should try to be more artsy, craftsy like that. But they tried to revive this particular craft during the Italian Renaissance, and that's when it started to spread around the world. More and more people saw it, and they thought, ooh, this is cool. Let's try it ourselves.
Yeah, revive, and the noun is revival. Yeah. For example, there was a blues music revival in the United States during the 1960s. It got popular again, and it hadn't been so popular before. Okay, so it spread around the world after the Italian Renaissance, and it's here to stay in a lot of places. And we'll continue talking about glass blowing in just a second, but let's take a break now. But stay tuned, we'll be right back. Okay, let's continue with our lesson for today. We're talking about glass blowing, which is done by a craftsman or an artisan. But we have this thing called mechanical glass making, in which you use machines and you can produce glass bottles and stuff in a factory. And that arose in the 19th and early 20th centuries, I guess, as a result of the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
Facilitating mass production. Okay, so because we had these changes, we had mechanical glass making at that time that facilitated mass production. And to facilitate means to make something easier. So facilitate means it makes it more possible because it's made easier. So indeed, I guess before they had these machines, they had to make all these glass bottles for Coca-Cola by hand, and that was time-consuming, but they developed these machines to do it, and that facilitated mass production. Now you could produce thousands of bottles a day instead of just one or two.
Yeah, it's no big deal now. To this day, or from that moment down through time until modern day, hand-blown glass fetches a loftier price. So to this day, if you're doing anything by hand, especially if it's some sort of craft that is taking place, you usually get to charge a lot more for whatever you're making. The people who make these things by hand take a lot of care, a lot of time to produce something beautiful. So the hand-blown glass today is fetching a loftier price than things that are made in a factory. Makes sense to me. Who cares if it's being made by a machine? But it's fun to have something where you can say, yeah, this was handmade by so-and-so. Lofty just means high. So loftier is a higher price than what you'd get for glass produced in a factory, owing to the expertise required to make it. Yeah, if you're an expert or a master at something, you've probably spent years and years refining your skills, developing your craft, and it makes sense that you could pay more for something you produce.
Yeah, go online and figure out where some of these places are. They've probably got a showroom where you can pick out some works of art and pay a pretty big price for them, but they are handmade. And they are worth it. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, to create a blown glass object, a glass blower first melts down glass inside a furnace. So this is the process in which a glass blower makes blown glass. And so we're calling this a blown glass object. So we've got the artisan, the craftsman, the glass blower, and they melt down the glass inside a furnace. Okay, so they put all these chemicals together in order to make the glass, but they've got to heat it, so they put it inside a furnace. And you talked about a furnace earlier. It's just some kind of machine that heats things up. In this particular case, it heats up glass so that it melts and you can make things with that glass. But yeah, furnaces are oftentimes machines that heat up our homes in the winter.
Yeah, so then the glass is extracted on one end of a blowpipe, and that craftsman then shapes it on a metal slab. To extract something means to remove it or take out. Usually you have to use some force to get it out. For example, if you have a bad tooth, the dentist will extract that tooth, and usually there's some pulling involved, which is kind of gross. I hate that.
Sounds painful.
Yeah, it can be. So they extract the glass after it's been heated up inside the furnace, and it's shaped on a metal slab. Slab here just means a portion of something, usually kind of thick, large. It could be a slab of butter. You know, I want to put a slab of butter on my roll. So a slab here, though, they're talking about a metal slab. So it's kind of a large, thick piece of metal, and it's usually flat. So slab. Or sometimes you'll hear people talk about, yeah, I put some rocks into my garden. They're slabs of rocks that you can walk across instead of walking on the grass and ruining the grass. They'll put some slabs of rock across their yard. So here it's actually shaped after it's taken out of the furnace on one end of a blowpipe, and they use that metal slab to then shape it.
Yeah, they rub it up against the metal slab. The metal won't melt, so they can shape the glass into different shapes. And throughout the process, the glass is periodically returned to the furnace to prevent it from solidifying.
Yeah.
So here, periodically, that's an adverb. It just means done at regular intervals. The word periodical refers to something that is done at regular periods of time, like magazines are oftentimes referred to as periodicals. They come out once a month or something like that. So, yeah, they've got to return to the furnace maybe every 2 or 3 minutes to prevent that glass from getting hard, from solidifying. And that's what solidify means, to get hard. So after lava comes out from a volcano, eventually it cools and solidifies and becomes rock again.
Yeah, I was thinking of caramel that I like to make at home. Sometimes if I cook it too long, it hardens too much, and so I'll put it back on the stove to soften it. That's kind of what is happening here. So for added color, which is one of the parts of glass blowing I like the best, is they put really beautiful colors into the glass instead of just having that white, transparent glass. For added color, the molten glass or heated glass is covered with tiny fragments of colored glass, which fuse quickly at high temperatures. If two things or more fuse together, it means they join and become one thing. And usually you need heat for that to happen. So yeah, they fuse together because they're both very hot at that point. The glass blower then blows air into the glass through the blowpipe. That's my favorite part. And uses tweezers. Remember those little tool that you can squeeze together to hold something. And those tweezers are used for detail work. Things where they want little changes to happen. Details are the little things, not the big things. And detaches the glass from the pipe with shears. If you detach something from something else, it comes apart. For example, my brother woke up last year and discovered that his retina had detached from his eye.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he was asleep when it happened. It was kind of crazy. So detach means to come apart from something, to disengage from that thing, to no longer be together. So they detach the glass from the pipe with shears. Shears we typically use when we're gardening. It's a tool that you can cut with, right? If you want to maybe prune your apple tree, you would use a pair of shears to do it. Shears are also used when we sew, a smaller tool to cut things.
Yeah, so these are various tools that are used in glass blowing. We've got tweezers and we've got shears. I think, well, we said wrench earlier, but we were using that as a noun, as a verb, I'm sorry. But we weren't actually using a wrench in the process.
You have a blowpipe. Yeah,
indeed. So the glass,
tool.
Yeah, eventually, though, when the artisan is done, the glass will go to an oven to slowly cool, to cool down gradually, and it becomes a finished work of art, and it's for sale. Now, during the 1960s, this is going back a long time here, Taiwan boasted a robust glass industry. Nearly all the world's Christmas lights were made here, for example.
Oh, really?
For instance. So, yeah, during the 1960s, if you were alive then, maybe you can ask your grandparents, hey, do you remember, back in the 1960s, was Taiwan really a powerhouse in the glass industry? It boasted a robust glass industry, which means it had a very big glass industry that produced glass for people all over the world. And an example here is that Christmas lights were made here for all the world, basically.
Wow.
If you were in the 1960s and you looked at your Christmas lights, it said, hey, made in Taiwan. Of course, nowadays, Christmas lights are mostly plastic, but back then they were made out of glass, the bulbs, Yeah. I remember those very much from my childhood. Blue and red and orange and stuff like that. They were all made out of glass, made in Taiwan.
Yay, Taiwan. Actually, I think glass blowing was pretty popular in the 60s and 70s. The colors were kind of crazy. It was a hippie thing to do as well. Yeah, no, I did not know that Taiwan made a lot of the Christmas lights. Doesn't surprise me. Taiwan has always been very, very a hardworking culture.
Sure.
People who work very hard. So over time, most glass makers were lured to China by low production overheads, leaving Taiwan's glass factories abandoned. Yeah, you don't have to pay people as much to work in China. At least that used to be the case. Now, even prices in China are going way up. And so now production's kind of moving to Vietnam as we speak.
Oh, no, I thought it would move back to Taiwan. But yes, we've got these glass makers, these companies that produce glass. They said, hey, let's go to China. Labor is cheaper there, and it's just cheaper in general to produce stuff and ship it out. So we've got these production overheads, which basically refers to the payment you have to make, the price you have to pay to produce things, the overhead. But in this case, it was cheaper to make stuff in China as opposed to Taiwan. So the factories were abandoned here. They probably were still there, or they, were sold and repurposed.
Used for something else.
Exactly. Or they were just simply torn down or something like that. But hey, glassmaking is still around. It says to keep their trade alive, Taiwan's remaining glass blowers now sell exquisite glass sculptures and offer factory tours. That sounds pretty fascinating. I'd like to know where these
where
glass factories are. Yeah, I'd like to check it out.
Well, we're calling them competent craftspeople. If you're competent, you have the necessary skills that you need, or you have the necessary knowledge, or you have the ability that's needed to perform some sort of job or to achieve some sort of goal. He's very competent, which means if someone describes you as being competent, it means you're good at what you do and they can trust you to do what you say you're going to do or what task you've been assigned. So they're very competent craftspeople here in Taiwan, and they're fighting to conserve Taiwanese glass blowing. When you conserve something, you keep it from disappearing, right? We like to talk about conserving energy and not using all the energy we have. You're going to protect something, make sure that it stays forever. And I love that they're trying to really conserve or save Taiwanese glass blowing and the craftsmen that are involved with it. But it says here, but only with public support can this trade pass to the next generation. That's a big deal with culture and some of the arts that are associated with people's culture, is that if we don't teach the next generation, then that particular craft will disappear forever. And we hope that doesn't happen with glass blowing.
Yep, so you can go to those factories and participate in those factory tours and buy those glass sculptures. You could also visit the Glass Museum in Hsinchu there to get some ideas about the kinds of things that Taiwan's factories produce in glass, and that might get you started there. Make some phone calls, do some research online, find out where these factories are, and support the local glass blowing industry and keep it alive for as long as possible. So some people may become interested and, hey, take glass blowing up themselves, and it will continue to live and exist forever. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. And we're going to say farewell here because we don't have a Chinese teacher to make any more comments. We hope you enjoyed our program. We hope we have encouraged you to check out the glass-blowing industry in Taiwan. And we'll see you next time. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Bye.
Bye.